Hey guys, welcome back. So today is a favorites video, so you guys know the drill. I have 8 plants to show you that are just a little bit extra fun these days. After going away on holiday, I had so many new leaves on my plants and like there was a lot to choose from and a lot of excitement to be had over my plants. Granted, some of them got a little bit sad because it got like underwatered and all that stuff, but I rounded up 8 plants to show you that are like, they're just fun. You'll see what I mean. And they're not all anthuriums. They are they're just 50% anthurium. You guys know how much I love my anthuriums, so they do take up half of this list, but also I'm trying to keep it a little bit more diverse, and there are 2 plants on this list that I've never ever shown on this channel before, just to keep things a little bit fresh. And I'll explain why I love it and everything like as we go on, but yeah, that's literally it. So let us get started. First one on the list is a wishlist plant that I literally got yesterday, but it made me so happy. And I know it's going to continue making me very happy. This is a gift from my dear friends Charmaine and Jing for my birthday. This is my brand new Philodendron polypodiodes. I've had this plant on my wish list for like 2 years running. It's finally getting very attainable these days. And Jing has had this plant for, I don't know, maybe like 6 months or so. And she's propagated it and stuff, but like Charmaine and I both want this plant. I think Charmaine already has this plant. Like she got it recently from Jing and I was the last one who didn't have it. And Jing has offered it to me a few times, but I wanted her to like sell cuttings. So I was like, just don't worry about me. I have a lot of plants. I don't have a lot of space, so I will wait. And they sprung this on me on my birthday. So this is, I think, a like, I don't know, a bottom or mid cut from Jing, and it's already sprouted. It's so cute. The new leaves are so cute. Look at that little needle and this little needle. This plant is so freaking adorable at every stage of maturity. So like the very first leaves, these little needle leaves, which is like, I think, what do they call it? Aciculate is the term that you would describe that leaf shape as. You know, like Hoya acicularis looks very, just looks like, what does it look like? It looks like rosemary. And then slightly more mature. What the heck? It's so freaking cute. And the leaves, so this is the most mature leaf on this plant. So it's getting that like podatum shape. It has these like upper lobes here. And I think it's actually quite a easy plant from everyone that's like talked to me about their experience growing this plant. So I'm very excited that it's going to be like reaching this size very soon. I personally thought that this was going to be a plant that you have to grow in a greenhouse because it's just so spindly, and the chances of it getting stuck on itself and like having trouble unfurling would be quite high. But people keep telling me like in the comments and DMs that this plant just does fine in room conditions. So it's not going into a greenhouse. It might go into an exo, but definitely not my tent. I don't think it needs to go into my tent. My exos are quite like low humidity. They're really more like display cases, more than anything. So the plan for this, here's the thing. With my Florida plants, like, and Florida is a cultivar. Is it a cultivar or a hybrid? It comes from podatum, right? So my experience with those types of plants is that they do fine on stakes and planks. Like it doesn't necessarily need to root into a moss pole to mature. I'll show you a little footage here of my Florida Ghost, which is like freaking massive and it's never been on a proper moss pole. For a long time it was on a bamboo stake, and then I recently, not that recently, but I moved it onto a stake and it's never like rooted into anything, and look how mature it is. So me and moss poles have a love-hate relationship. I really love what they can do for plants, but if I can get away with not using one and not having to water a pole on top of everything else, sign me up. So I haven't quite decided. I will get it onto some kind of support. It is still teeny tiny, so like the stem is down here. There's not a huge rush to get it onto something, and I can see that it is like quite well rooted. It's currently in what looks like a mixture of tree fern fiber and soil, which I personally really love as a substrate. But yeah, I'm so happy, you guys. I'm just so grateful. I cannot tell you how grateful I am to have the group of friends that I have. Like, this our very tiny little group of friends. Everyone always like reminds us in comments and stuff that like we're so lucky to have found each other, and like, trust me, I don't take that for granted. As like a very introverted person, like I would say I'm probably like an extroverted introvert, but very leaning towards introvert. So to get to that level of friendship with somebody is quite, it doesn't come very often. And now that we have like a few years of friendship under our belts, I feel like we know each other really well. I feel like they know me better than almost anybody else in my life. On top of really loving this plant and really coveting this plant in the first place, this also represents a lot to me, like of our friendship, and just, I don't know, like every year we get each other gifts and stuff, and we always try to include a plant if there's a plant on their wish list, but at this point it's really difficult for us to find something that like the person doesn't already have in their collection, because our collections are quite big. So at this point it's really hard to find a plant that somebody really wants. But when it's so thoughtful and so decorated, like it's just a party. And I'm very, very excited to have this plant. I'm not that into philodendrons lately, but this is definitely one that I would be putting the time in for. I'd be really excited about new leaves. And also, like, on top of being like a very fun tropical plant that, you know, kind of like a collector's plant, it also looks so amazing just as like decor. So I don't know if I have the conditions for this like in my regular household in like open conditions, because I just don't get that much light. But if you do decorate with plants and you have a lot of good light, natural sunlight in your house, I think this would be like a really good plant to have as decoration, because it's just so structural and spindly and fun like that. Look at that. I know Tyler, your local plant boy, he has a polypodiodes that has been just kind of like saved in my Instagram photos for so long, because I think his specimen is beautiful. He's had it for a really long time, and his like aesthetic is really nice, and he has this out in the open in his living room, I believe. So yeah, thank you Jing and Charmaine so much for this plant. Well, I guess this part of the gift was from Jing. Thank you so much. I am just over the moon for this plant. We finally did it. I think I'm gonna like spread the anthuriums out throughout this video, so I'm gonna like jump back and forth. This next plant I obtained shortly before my vacation, and it lived at Northwood Tropicals for the 3 or 4 weeks before I came back, and I picked it up the first week I came back, and I freaking love it. This is my Anthurium Queen of Hearts. So this plant was supposed to be a splitsies with Charmaine. You can see the plant tag, Sherms and Alvin, because originally we had gotten a Queen of Hearts from Amanda, and Charmaine won that plant in the slapping game, so she has it, but then I don't remember what exactly happened, but it's declining, and I think it's like a leafless stump right now, maybe. And then I never had this plant, so Lauren got some of these in, and she picked a specimen for us to share, and she's been rooting it out for us in the shop. But then while Charmaine was in California, she got a package from Amanda, and that included a replacement Queen of Hearts for her. So I think we're not gonna split this anymore, and this is just my plant now, so I'm very excited for that. Of course, if Charmaine's plant starts to die again, I would happily chop this one for her. I don't know why this plant doesn't seem to get that much love. I don't really know why. I think because it's like glossy and not velvety. I'm not really sure why, but it is like so dark. Like, look at that leaf. It is so stunning. I will say the only thing I don't love about this plant is that the leaves are quite thin in texture. So this is a fully hardened leaf, and you can kind of see like how pliable it is. It is like a papery kind of leaf, but the texture of like the surface and the color really wins it over for me. And you'll see it especially in mature specimens where the surface of the leaf is like super grainy and leathery. It's just incredibly stunning. And then while the plant was acclimating at the shop, it pushed out this leaf, which is still quite floppy. It was so freaking red when I brought it home, and it's been slowly working on expanding this whole time. It's just such a stunning Anthurium. I cannot wait for it to get really big. This is one of the plants that I really want to get big because I've seen Amanda's like mature specimen that she cut from for us, and the leaves are just got that like oily, blackish, bluish, almost kind of iridescent color. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it kind of looks like a plant that's kind of easy to size up. You know, like Magnificum wants to size up pretty drastically between leaves, whereas like a Forgetii takes a little bit longer to size up. I feel like this is a plant that will size up a little bit quicker. So if you own this plant, let me know if that's the case. But this is kind of like my petition for people to love this plant a little bit more because it is so freaking stunning. Just the colors, like the emergent leaf color and like the halfway hardened color like this, which is like very brownish, like a really beautiful deep brown, and then it hardens to this like inky dark. Ugh. This plant originally came from Tazula. Nope, that's not true. This plant was sold by Tazula, but it was grown by Silver Chrome Gardens. So there's like a little kind of information advice kind of thing that gets shipped with this plant that like, please repot this as soon as possible, because it's like, from what I didn't see pictures of it, but from Lauren's description, it was basically like mud. So she got it immediately into a mixture of tree fern and her aroid mix, her soil mix, which I personally really love for Anthuriums. I've never used it as like a rooting media or like a medium for like acclimating imported plants. Not that it came very far, but that is a substrate that has worked really, really well for me for a lot of Anthuriums, like my King of Spades in that. And it had roots to begin with, but they have grown like quite a few healthy roots. Some roots are like circling around the bottom. You can see that she's like mixed in tons of perlite into this, and I think her soil mix is probably like soil, cocoa husk, perlite, maybe some bark. Yeah, there's some bark in here. And then all of that is mixed in with tree fern fiber. And assuming she doesn't do it by measurement, like she's probably like me, where you kind of go by feel and you mix and then you put your hands through it and you like see what, if you like the consistency. But I'm guessing it's something like 50-50 because I can see quite a bit of tree fern in here. So if you haven't tried this substrate mix for Anthuriums, I really recommend it. I wouldn't say it's definitely a good mix to root a plant that is lacking in roots, because I've personally never tried that. I've just grown like fully established plants. Maybe if you're like, oh, it's not really growing in pond, or it's not really growing in just straight tree fern, try the tree fern soil mix, because that has been just like, the Anthuriums are just growing a lot faster in that in comparison to like previous mixes. So like I've had Anthuriums go from like soil mix to tree fern soil, and it's done better in the latter. I've also had like plants that didn't quite love it in pond, and I've tried tree fern soil, and that's been really good. Some people ask me like, what's the deal with you using like pond for some things, like tree fern for some things, and soil for some things? How do you decide like why so many substrates? And my answer to that really is like, I have a few substrates that I personally prefer for Anthuriums. So pond is one, tree fern with like perlite mixed in is another, and then tree fern soil is the third. Those are my three favorite substrates for Anthuriums. I typically like to like start an Anthurium in pond if I've never grown it before, if it's like a new acquisition to me, and then I'll like move it onto something else if it's not quite working, like if it keeps rotting or something like that. And sometimes it's really just like what my fickle heart wants in the moment when I'm potting it up. I just kind of like, I feel like tree fern today. And sometimes it is determined by the types of pots I have available. So it all really depends. I know those three substrates work really well, but if I'm switching from one to the other, it would probably be because the original substrate wasn't quite doing it for that plant. Like Anthuriums are quite a diverse genus, and they come from all different parts of the world. So to assume that one substrate would be like the best substrate for all of them is probably not really realistic. So that's my long-winded answer to that question that I've gotten a few times. But back to this plant. I love it so much. I can remember When I lost this plant in the tortilla slap, I was very sad. I was really sad. I was happy for Charmaine, but I was sad for me, and I haven't stopped thinking about it since. So at this point in my life, I'm like, that's kind of the standard of requirement for me buying a plant. I need to be able to like sit on it for a while, really think about it. And if it fizzles out, then I really don't need it, you know? So this really never fizzled out for me. It's getting really dark in here. This plant has like stayed very top of mind for me since we slapped for it, which would have been like January or something like that. So yeah, here we are. We're finally together and I'm so happy. It's such a good plant. All right, so this next one is one of the ones that I have never shown on my channel before. And I don't know why, other than the fact that it's in my living room. So in my like shelf, if you watch like my collab with Charmaine, my latest one, and like my last repot that I filmed, like last week's video. So that shelf that's behind me, that IKEA shelf, has grow lights, and near to the bottom, it's like all succulents. Oh, you can already see the plant. And this plant lives on that shelf. And I know I'm gonna pronounce this wrong, but Aluaudia procera. Here is the name written out. So I got this plant 2 years ago. I got this plant from Serre Lavoie in Montreal, but I picked this up. I brought it back in my suitcase. Was it my suitcase? I think it was my suitcase, but it's lived on that shelf ever since. And it got it a little bit tall because you can see that this little bit was starting to like grow into the shelf above it. So it was like curving on itself. So I used to have this in like it's probably like a 2.5, 3 inch like little rounded cement pot in no drainage. It was like this big, and it was getting dried out all the time. And I know that because like the leaves on it wouldn't stick around. They would always like yellow and fall off. So these like tiny little leaves that are on this plant. So I opted to get into something much bigger. And then once I had potted it into this pot, I squealed. I was so happy with this combination. I got this pot from, if you're local to me, ArtNap. And they have like a good pot selection, but it's obviously not like exclusive to them. I just never seen them elsewhere before, but it's awesome. This pot is so cute, and it's glazed on the inside, and it's such a beautiful color. And once I had it potted up, I was just absolutely smitten. How cute is this? So I've moved it now. It's sitting on my desk, like literally right here. This is where I edit. It gets a lot of sun. You can kind of see the sun coming in right now. I think this is like south. I don't know, you know me with my directions, southeast, southwest, something like that. Oh no, it must be southwest because the sun comes down. Yeah, something like that. So it gets like a good amount of afternoon sun. It's quite bright. The cacti and succulents that I have growing on the windowsill here do really well. Like, they're growing really tall. They're not really stretching. It's a good place for arid plants. Like this is just awesome. I really, really like this. And I really kind of hope that it branches at some point, because now it's just like these 2 antennae coming up. Not that I really mind it, but I'm still trying to figure out the care of this plant. I think it will drop leaves at certain times of the year, and I've watched like a reel, I think on Arium Botanicals Instagram page, talking about this plant and like kind of, you know, the leaf shedding and like the care, like what to expect throughout the year. And I don't really recall off the top of my head because it is in a controlled environment. So I'm not growing it outside. So I've never had it shed all of its leaves except for like it dropping some leaves when I underwater it. And just kind of as an aside, I realized after like years of killing succulents that my succulents do best in no drainage and not terracotta. And I think it's because I tend to pot them quite small. Terracotta and kind of when soil gets hydrophobic, it just is not a good combination. So no drainage has been like the only way I've been able to properly give a cacti or succulent a good drink. I think everything that I've had that's like a ball shape, like very juicy and round, I've killed because it's just shriveled up and died. And like when I water it, I've never been able to get the roots properly hydrated. So if you are a cactus killer like me, and you obviously have to like assess how it's dying. So if it's turning like see-through and mushy and brown, we've probably rotted it by overwatering. But for me, it's just kind of getting slowly, progressively smaller and smaller and smaller until it's like this little raisin. And to me, that's like dehydration, probably not from like wet rot. I think I'm constantly drying them out. So no drainage has been really good. So this is actually planted in no drainage. There are no holes on the bottom of this cup. I put a little layer of leca if I have it. If I don't, then I put a layer of like pon or perlite. And my desert plants have been so much happier since I did that. Obviously, another thing that would work well is like a nursery pot or like an orchid pot sitting inside of a cache pot. But yeah, I'm just over the moon over this combination. I don't know why I didn't think about it sooner, but now I need more of these pots. So if you find this pot somewhere else, please slide into my DMs and let me know, because I need more of these. They are so freaking cute. I'm not a pot person, but I will make an exception for this one. Okay, so this next one is an emergent leaf appreciation. This is my Anthurium Carla Blackier crossed with Black Velvet Eastern Panama from Grant and Juan via Amanda. And I just wanted to show you guys this new leaf. How beautiful. It's so red, but it's like a purpley winey red. I'm really hoping that the color is showing up on camera, but it's so incredibly stunning. And that sinus, that little burst of bright white in the middle. Ugh. So I've talked a few times about how I've been able to get some of my velvety anthuriums looking really dark. And the answer for me, and it's not the same for every plant, but for some plants that are like dark, like they're meant to be dark or like have the potential to be very, very blacky dark, the answer for me has been brighter light. So this is definitely the blackest leaf I've been able to grow myself. When this came to me from Amanda, it was quite dark. This is what the plant looked like when I first got it, and it was really just beautifully dark. Like Carla Blackie is a very dark plant, Bevep's a very dark plant. Together they should make a really dark plant, but in my care, the leaves were growing quite green, or at least hardening off that way. So you can kind of see how green that is. I think this might actually be the same leaf that I was just showing you in that footage. Here's one that I grew in my care that's like decently dark, but it's not like blackish dark. It's not as dark as this plant can potentially be. This is definitely the darkest I've ever gotten, and this is under higher light than any of those other plants. Some of you have been reporting that you are also seeing the same results as I am with like pushing the light on the velvety dark anthuriums. You just get vibrancies and contrast, and that makes me even more excited about how this leaf is going to turn out, because it is freaking stunning. And if I'm looking at the petiole, it is like slightly thicker than the leaf before it, which tells me that it's going to be a nice size leaf. I think it'll be a little bit darker and a little bit bigger than this. Just hope that it does not get spider mites. I am considering, as an aside, doing a bug bomb on my tent. I've been talking about bug bombs with, or like a fumigator with Lauren. We're always discussing pests and stuff and like sharing what's working for us. And she's saying that like, even if you're wiping down the leaves and stuff, like if you're not wiping down your shelves, you're probably going to be missing some of them because they're going to be crawling around on there. So you're like, you're treating the plant. The spider mites that are on the shelf are going to like come off the shelf and go back on your plant. You're never really going to fully eradicate them. So we're like, what about fumigating the room? With her shop is one thing, but with my plant room, I do my makeup in there, like all my stuff is there. I have other like household things in there, so I'm not really sure about bombing that room, but I could bomb the tent. I just don't know if it's overkill because it's like such a small tent, but these are things that I'm exploring in this like never-ending fight against spider mites. I just don't know. I don't know. It would be nice to like have a spider mite free zone like at my tent, but there's always going to be spider mites out there unless like I completely get rid of them. I just cannot wait till the day that I'm like rid of spider mites and I find the system and like the lineup of products that really works for me. But anyway, just wanted to show you this plant because this leaf is one of the most beautiful new leaves I've ever seen. Look at that absolute stunner. All right, another new leaf appreciation. This is my Anthurium Red Crystal crossed with Portier from Amanda. And it's such a funny plant. This plant really gives the reddest, orangiest, most vibrant emergent leaves. They are so beautiful. This plant is, it really is not what I expected this plant to look like when I imagined this hybrid. So when I knew this plant was coming just by name, I pictured something totally different than this plant. Like I really thought it was going to be like a red crystal, so like really red Venetian with really thick silver around it. And I was also expecting a portier shape, like at least a wide sinus, if not like a very flat sinus, but something a little bit widened. But what we have is a dark, elongated crystallinum with very red colors. And it's not what I expect, but I absolutely love this plant. It's such a fun plant, and it's actually quite a fast grower, and it rooted quite fast for me as well. But I've never gotten the chance to like document an emergent leaf on this plant, I don't think, on this channel. And I really wanted to show you guys because it's so beautiful when there's a new leaf forming. I think because of the genetics of the plant, it really does have the potential to like change shape as it matures. So who knows what it's gonna look like 5 leaves down the road. I'm really excited for it to get really big and just see what this plant can do, because I think it's gonna be really fun to watch. Okay, I'm gonna have to scooch back to show you guys this next one. This is my Dracaena reflexa. I showed you guys this plant when I got it maybe like 2 months ago, maybe like a month and a half, something like that. So this is a plant that I got for one of my cafe installs, and it was just a little bit too wide, a little bit too bushy, so I took a few cuttings and I gave one to Charmaine and I kept 2 for myself. And I've been trying to root this so I can like grow this in my living room because I think it's just such a fun plant. I don't know if you guys like follow any like architectural accounts or like just interior design in general, but the use of Dracaenas has been really popular because of this like very windy, spindly, Dr. Seussy, interesting structural shapes that make it very interesting to decorate with, because the leaves aren't really so much the focus so much as like the overall shape of the plant. So I've been patiently waiting to root this in water so that I can pot it up and like put it out in my living room, because I think this is just such a pretty plant. And I'm going to try actually to like reduce the number of plants out in my living space and just have a few like very focal plants. And I want more trees. So this is like ticking every single box for me. I love the shape of it. I love how easy it is. It's such an easygoing plant, and Dracaenas in general are quite like drought tolerant. They might not grow that fast under low light, but they will definitely like kind of survive and stay the same. So I've had this in water. Oh geez. Oh no. Oops. Okay, so I had this like paper towel to hold the stem in place, but it's just fallen into the bottle. So if I let go, it might just fall into the water. But this very dirty water is what I've been trying to root it in, and it's like pushed out all these like primordial roots, but I'm just waiting for them to turn into real roots. And I might even actually, oh, there is one. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see that. I don't know which direction to tilt this in, but there is one root pushing out. So I was thinking either to grow this plant either in like a tree fern soil mix, or like a really, yeah, not a super dense soil mix, or leca, because like leca to me is such a low maintenance substrate. You can really see exactly where the water level is if it's growing in no drainage in a clear vessel. It all really depends if I find like a pot that I really want to decorate with, but this is like one of my favorite plants. I feel so privileged to own it because it's not that easy to find. I wouldn't call it a rare plant or an uncommon plant, but it's not commonly found in stores. I don't know why, but like a Dracaena marginata is so easy to find. You just have to find the right one, the one that has like the most interesting shape. So oftentimes that will come from like someone on Facebook Marketplace who has been growing this plant for like 10 years and they've let it kind of grow wild. But if you're gonna get it from a store or like straight from a nursery or greenhouse, they tend to keep the Dracaenas like very straight and very tidy, which I don't think is the full potential of the plant. Like the plant growing all windy and twisty and wild is what makes it special. So if you are looking for one, I would actually like probably try to find one on Facebook Marketplace or something in a Facebook group, or you know, like an estate sale or something, like with someone selling off like a plant they've been growing for a really long time. Or if they have it braided, that's actually probably better than a straight one because it already has the wave in it. But I find the green reflexa a little bit harder to find than the variegated one, which is the Song of India. And I think there are probably other varieties, but those are the two that I know of. So, oh, yep. The paper towel tail is in the water. But I really hope to see like this plant in more people's collections because it's great. It's so beautiful. And we get these leaves like really shined up with like a microfiber, and it just looks so dark and just lustrous, luxurious, just lush and green and beautiful. It looks so good. I recently went into the coffee shop that I installed it in, and I just like shined and buffed everything up because a lot of dust settles on those plants, and it looked really good. Okay, I showed this plant a couple of videos ago. I want to show it again. This is my Anthurium Magnificum crossed with luxurians. And I wanted to like take this opportunity to show you footage of when I got this plant from Lauren. I think this was a year ago. So this was grown from seed. This was a hybrid that Lauren did, and she gave it to me as a sprouted seed. So it had 1 or 2 tiny microscopic little leaves. And now a year later, we've got the biggest leaf I've ever grown on a seed grown Anthurium, and I'm in love. I love this plant. And I feel like the size on this plant, like the jump, does come from the Magnificum genes within the hybrid, because other Lux hybrids I have that are crossed with other things like Crystal Mag or just Crystallinum, they haven't sized up the way that this plant has sized up. The size up between leaves is a little bit more marginal, but this jump, and also the jump on the plant, like Lauren's specimen, her personal plant from this seed batch, is it's obscene. It's disgusting. It's humongous. So I'm happy that I'm finally getting to that leaf jump size. And just how beautiful are these lobes? The way that they curve inwards to each other. This was the specimen of the two that I have that I didn't like as much, because the other one I have from the seed batch is just like really like round and just gives me a lot of cute aggression. But this one, I didn't love it as much because it was a little bit more like this, like elongated, and it had this like funny like not overlapping but like curved in towards each other lobes, like that, kind of like a Anthurium does. It's on this leaf as well. It's pretty much like on every leaf. I like that, but the overall leaf shape, it wasn't anything to write home about. But then this one really does have a luxuriance shape. It's so symmetrical, and the size up is, okay, so the last leaf would have been this one to this one. Like, I did that. I grew it from seed, and it did really like that repot that I did. So this is like a deli cup in like pond, perlite, orchiata, and the roots, since I potted it up maybe about a month and a half ago, has been very healthy, quite vigorous. Before Ecuador had the Lux hybrids, it was just like Amanda. Like Amanda was doing all the luxuriance hybrids. Like she was the one that brought it to market pretty much. And then since Ecuador started doing a luxuriance hybrids with like everything, then I feel like the market is very flooded. I don't even think people will even want this plant anymore. But if you were to like come across a plant of this size, I feel like it'd be really hard to say no to, like, because you can start to see the difference between a luxuriance hybrid with Magnificum versus Papillamnum or whatever. But when it's quite small, they all look exactly the same. Sometimes you'll have like different colors, but I'm gonna put a photo in of Amanda's Ace hybrid with luxurians, and you really do see the Ace. The colors are really different. My friend Terrence also has this Ace Lux hybrid. It's like really beautiful, but you have to kind of be patient and wait for it to get to a certain size before you start to see the differences, because at first they all look exactly the same. Also, as just a bit of an aside, I've personally never done it. I've never done a hybrid with luxurians because my luxurians has never flowered. But if you see luxurians hybrids on the market, you'll typically see luxurians as the pollen donor, the father plant. So that means it'll come second in the name. So the mother plant comes first. So like Magnificum crossed with luxurians means Magnificum was the seed bearing plant, and luxurians is the pollen bearing plant. You'll often see luxurians as the father because luxurians has a tendency to like really die back when it produces berries. So I've heard stories of people pollinating their luxurians and it just like drops all its leaves, or like it gets really, really sickly, and people just find it's not really worth it to like really do so much damage on the plant, whereas other plants tend to bear seed a little bit better. So if you have a luxurians that's flowering and you want to cross it, maybe cross it to something else and use it as the pollen donor. That would be my advice based on no personal experience, just like me reading other people's anecdotal experiences. Okay, last plant is my Philodendron patriciae. I think this might be currently my favorite philodendron in my whole collection, at least for right now. It's doing so good. It is such an easy plant. So this is the newest leaf that I showed in like my, you know, back from vacation video. Just double checking for spider mites. And I said it wasn't gonna be very big, but it's been doing good things. It's still very floppy, as you can see. It's got some expanding to do, but compared to the previous leaf, we're catching up, right? And I really thought that like with the reduced light that I put on the plants, the grow light timers being on for like 50% of the time, I really thought that this leaf would be quite a bit smaller, but I think it's gonna end up around the same size as the last leaf. And just, I cannot believe that I grew this plant to this size and it's doing okay. I mean, it's a climbing philodendron. Not that I think that it really needs a moss pole, but it is a climbing type. It's not a crawling type. And it's sized up for me. It's never really had trouble coming out of the sheath. And the leaves stay on for ages, and it's held on to so many leaves. And just look at it. Just look at it. It's so freaking beautiful. Like, take a look at those ruffles and those ripples. This is just such a show-stopping plant. If you are on the fence about this plant because it's kind of known as, I don't know if it's known anymore, but for a really long time it was known as a little bit more finicky and needs high humidity, blah, 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 blah. Let this be a testament that if I can do it, you can do it. Because I suck at philodendrons, and I suck at climbing philodendrons specifically. I lack the desire, the meticulousness, the thoroughness to wet moss poles and foliar feed and things like that. So with my very lackluster care of philodendrons, I was able to grow this from a stem cutting about this big. It was a mid-cut, and look at her now. So I'm very proud of what I did with this plant. Honestly, I really love the emergent leaves on this plant because when it comes out, it's quite flat. So it doesn't look like it has much dimension, but as the leaf expands and hardens, then the ruffles start to come out like this. And then the next thing you know, it's like a fully hardened leaf, and it's like a ripply, thick green ribbon. I think at one point it was quite a popular plant and really hyped plant, but at some point it became underrated. And I think we're at that point where this plant is really underrated. I think there's just like the love for philodendrons is kind of like cooled a little bit, but if you have the opportunity to get this plant, and I think maybe like if someone is in your Facebook group and they don't love plants anymore and they're getting rid of stuff that they acquired and they have like uncommons like this, get it. Like, it's such a good plant, and it doesn't take up that much space. Like, you can see that the petioles are not that long. It's not like my Florida Beauty that has like 3-foot long petioles and you'll run out of space. Like, I think this contains itself really well, and it's such a statementy plant. I always internally ask myself if the Heterocraspidon or the Patriciae is my favorite, like between the two, which one I would choose. And I always kind of lean towards the Heterocraspidon, but I think this one over time has taken the cake. It's just performed so well for me. And I think as in terms of like large leaves and mature leaves with like a lot of length and size, I think that the Patriciae with the ruffles, it kind of does it for me a little bit more. I do love the hetero a lot, but I think this is the one for me in terms of strappy long leaf philodendrons. But yeah, definitely my love for philodendrons has cooled a lot. I don't give them the love and tender care that I used to. They're not out of my life. It's not like Hoyas where I'm like, I I'm really cool towards Hoyas, but philodendrons, I'm a little bit more focused on Anthuriums, but there are philodendrons in my collection, like this one, and I know the polypodiodes. I'll always be like investing the time and care to make sure that they're growing well and watered and upsized and poles extended and things like that. It doesn't even really ask for much at the end of the day. It just kind of wants water, kind of more often than other philodendrons, like, I don't know, gloriosum, just as an example. So you can see that like I have it in no drainage and in a little bit denser of a mix. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see actually. It is less amended than other aeroid soils that I use. I don't even think there's bark in here. It's just like some perlite. And I do have a reservoir layer. It's black leca. So I can actually keep a bit of a reservoir in here. I find this plant a little bit thirsty. I found that to be true more when I had it in a more aerated soil mix, but since I got it into this soil mix, I haven't had to water it as much, obviously. And the pole is filled with like tree fern. So I find tree fern really easy to water through. It doesn't like repel water the way that moss does. And it definitely has rooted in there. Where is it? If I can get it without the glare, there's a big juicy root coming down the middle and some like roots around the side. I just basically go in with my watering can and I just water through the hole here, let it run down the pole, and then obviously that will water the substrate as well, and then I'll just go over the substrate a little bit more. And that's literally all the care that this plant gets. I don't even foliar feed it, although I probably should and I probably could, but I don't. Maybe that'll be something that I do more often, is foliar feeding. But yeah, that is the last plant on this list. And we're finishing at a good time because the sun is now blasting through the window and I'm getting really, really hot. All right, guys, that's gonna do it for me this week. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm really curious to know what your current like top favorite plant is in your collection. Not like of all time, just what's doing exceptionally well for you at the moment. So let me know. But yeah, I hope you have an awesome rest of your day. I love you so much and I'll see you in the next one. Mwah.